It's already the third week in our Advent series, and this week, Becky Fitch from our Livermore area church is here to talk about a great verse that actually I also memorized back in college, and I still remember. John 11:35.
Yeah.
Very good. I'm very good at it.
You have good memory.
I have good recall. Yeah. Actually, I have a great memory, but terrible recall.
I feel like that's a good marker for knowing if you were raised in the church and you're trying to identify, was I a weird, nerdy Christian kid? If you did the joke, hey, I just memorized a whole verse in the Bible today, and then you proceed to say, Jesus wept, John 11:35. Yes, you are in fact a nerdy Christian kid.
That is me.
Yeah.
That is me. Hey, let's talk about your message about Jesus entering into grief with Mary and Martha about their brother Lazarus. And I love the approach that you took in saying, like, this is the non-answer that Jesus had for them. Can we talk about the fact that grief and hope are kind of opposites? And how do you balance being real about pain, just being present, and also with clinging to the hope that Advent brings?
Yeah, I mean, I think the natural thing is to think of them as being opposite. Although I think grief is the reality of something that's not as it should be, right? It's the response to a reality that's not as it should be. And hope is the anticipation of something that's still not yet. And so I do think the two, even though they feel opposite, can coexist together. And I think sometimes it feels like if we're hopeful in the midst of our grief or our pain or despair, it feels like we're glossing over how painful it is or the actual brokenness. But I think hope in the midst of it almost helps us navigate that more authentically, because it can be true that things feel broken or not as they should be, and we can still hold on to this anticipation of, but that's not the end of the story. And so I think, that's important to keep both at the forefront of our minds as we're processing that both grief
I think it's a more honest. It's a more honest way to be Christ followers. Because I feel like in the church, and maybe you've also experienced this, but we sometimes push people that are with us, because we're joined by quite a few people who have experienced loss, who are experiencing loss right now, and are wondering, like, what this Advent, if there is any hope, if there's any healing for them. Oftentimes when you come to church, it's to help you get distracted from, look away from, cover up your grief with words of hope and future, and which is all true, but to say, let's look away, because your focus on all these bad things is actually probably the enemy is at work within you to keep that bubbling to the top. But instead, let's live victoriously, and let's yell it together that we are victorious and that we can focus on that. Can you talk to that a little bit? Why Cornerstone is trying to do that very differently?
Yeah, I think it's more of a cultural reality where, for whatever reason, American Christians, for decades, centuries, haven't learned how to lament, and it's such a crucial emotional expression you see in Scripture. There's literally a whole book, the book of Psalms, that is mainly laments, not just, songs of praise. And so, but yet it's something we tend to just neglect, like that if you have hope, then you can't sit in sorrow. And if you really trust in Jesus, then you can't focus on the grief. And you just don't see that in Scripture. You don't see that in Jesus, how he lived, that both things can be true at the same time. And things can be dark and feel painful or broken or not as they should be, and we can still hold on to hope. And so I think it's important for the church to kind of recapture that trueness of who we are and who we're meant to be as we navigate not only people who are walking through pain that are within our walls and within a part of our church family, but as we navigate and walk alongside people outside of the church, to not just offer the simple, easy platitudes of God will never give you more than you can handle, or like these phrases that are kind of dismissive of someone's pain, and just sitting in the reality of this is awful and this is broken, and I'm present with you in
my
that.
personality type, I'm not into this, okay? I'm just about laughing it off. I'll have another joke coming right with your who died, I'm right there. So for those of us who are not super comfortable with or inexperienced in allowing allow yourself to sit with Jesus in your grief, can you real quickly, because we're out of time, but kind of explain to people
You've never asked me to. I guess you don't really know me because I don't think I do anything really quick.
Well, I can try. Who knows? This may actually be a really great starting point for you.
We'll see.
A whole new year.
Okay.
What does it feel like to sit with Jesus in pain? What can people experience? What can people expect rather when they do that and say, Jesus, I just want to sit with you in grief. God, I want you to join me in my pain, in my missing, in my dark places.
Yeah, it does require a slowing or stopping enough to focus and sit on that, right? It can't just be, I keep myself busy so I don't have to think about it.
This is Christmas time, Becky. Right there, you've lost us a little bit.
Totally, but also even in the midst of this Christmas season, even if you're trying to stay as busy as possible, it's going to hit you, right? You're going to smell of that thing you make every Christmas Eve, and it brings back your dad that's not, it will get you. And so you can either be a part of the framework in which it gets you, if that makes sense, or you can just ignore it and let it completely unravel you. And so I think I'd rather, being a person who loves control, I'd rather help create space where I can sit in that. And, but I think it looks different. I've experienced Jesus's presence with me when I'm silent and in solitude, and I've experienced it from people when someone's actions or someone's words or someone's just presence with me, and I experience Jesus through that. I experience Jesus's presence with me when I am angry and frustrated and tears and getting it out, and I've experienced it when I just can't even bring myself to say anything because there's no words left to say. And so I think the presence of Jesus, it's not formulaic. I think, like I said in the sermon, he meets us right where we're at, and oftentimes it's not us doing the right things to manipulate the arrival of his presence. It's us just kind of surrendering and being open to experiencing what he has for us in that moment. Yeah. And I've just experienced the reality that it oftentimes is what I need it to be.
For Advent, I think this is a super honest and helpful message. Thank you so much and as you're sitting around our table here with us, what about you? Are you waiting for a miracle or something that you're hoping that something that's dead will come back to life, that something that's broken could be healed, or something that's missing could be restored? If that's you, let us know. I actually would love to meet with you and talk with you and pray for you. I know Becky feels the same way. And also, let me put a question here on screen that you can use to go a little bit further in exploring all these truths. I'll leave it up for a few minutes. I want you to turn to someone, attempt to answer it, or answer it in the chat with others who attend Church Online with you right now, or throw it in the group text to talk about it with friends, or write it at the top of your journal page for today's entry. Here's the question: how can recognizing that God meets us where we are, not where we think we should be, could change the way we approach our own pain and the pain of others? Hey, I'm so glad you were here with us. I hope to see you next time.